You clear security, bag back together, shoes back on, boarding pass gripped in one hand. You just need one thing before you find your gate: a bathroom. It's not there. You walk. You keep walking, past a perfume counter, past a watch display, past a wall of chocolate boxes the size of suitcases, past a bar nobody's sitting at yet. Finally, tucked behind the fourth duty-free entrance, you find it. That walk wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad planning. It was measured, tested, and built that way on purpose in nearly every major airport on the planet, and the reason traces back to one small kiosk on the edge of Ireland in 1947. Think about this. You've walked through dozens of airports, small regional ones with a single concourse, massive international hubs with trains connecting one wing to another, different countries, different decades since they were built. But almost every single one of them makes you walk an unusually long, oddly specific route between the place you clear security and the place you can actually sit down and wait for your flight. And almost every single one of those routes runs directly through retail. Why does nearly every major airport route you through the exact same kind of maze before you can reach a bathroom, a seat, or your gate? Not a random hallway, not an unavoidable side effect of a big building. This one specific pattern, repeated with almost identical logic from Los Angeles to London to Singapore, regardless of who built the terminal or when. You're probably thinking, easy, airports are just big, terminals need space, security needs distance from gates. It's simply a large building. That's the obvious answer, and it would make sense if the layout felt random. It doesn't. Bathrooms in most terminals aren't merely far away, they're specifically positioned past retail corridors, often requiring a walk that takes you directly through duty-free entrances you'd otherwise have no reason to enter. A building can be large without funneling every single person through the same narrow commercial gauntlet. This isn't the shape of a big space. It's the shape of a deliberate path. To understand why, we have to go back to 1947, to a small airport on the western edge of Ireland that had nothing to do with grand design theory and everything to do with one man trying to keep an airport from going bankrupt. Shannon Airport sat at a strange geographic sweet spot right after World War II, the closest refueling point in Europe for propeller aircraft making the long hop across the Atlantic. Planes stopped there constantly, not because passengers wanted to be in Western Ireland, but because the aircraft of the era physically couldn't make the crossing without landing to refuel first. That meant hundreds of transit passengers a day, sitting around a small terminal with nothing to do but wait, often for hours, with money in their pockets and absolutely nowhere to spend it. Some travelers had just crossed an ocean by seaplane and would cross another stretch of it before the day was through, stuck in a kind of geographic limbo between two countries, belonging fully to neither. The airport's catering manager noticed this idle, captive crowd and saw an opportunity nobody had really acted on before. He lobbied the Irish government to pass a law declaring the airport's transit area exempt from normal taxes and duties, arguing that passengers who hadn't technically entered the country shouldn't be taxed as if they had. The law passed in March of 1947, and 2 months later, a small kiosk opened inside the terminal, staffed by one clerk selling Irish linen, lace, and whiskey to bored, waiting travelers. That kiosk is now recognized as the origin of the entire global duty-free industry. But the part that matters for your bathroom walk isn't the tax exemption itself. It's what airport operators everywhere learned from watching it work. A captive audience with idle time and money in their pocket, funneled past the right products, will spend consistently, predictably, and profitably enough that within a decade, airports across Europe and eventually the world had copied the model, then spent the following 7 decades refining exactly how to maximize that captive time even further. Within a few years, that single clerk's kiosk had expanded into a full duty-free shop selling liquor and perfume, and airport operators as far away as Amsterdam and later across the Atlantic were sending representatives to study exactly how a tiny airport in rural Ireland had turned bored, waiting passengers into a genuine revenue stream. Here's where the layout of the modern airport actually comes from. Airport planners now openly track something called dwell time, the measurable stretch between when a passenger clears security and when they board, and treat it as one of the most valuable pieces of real estate an airport owns. Every additional minute a passenger spends walking past shops instead of sitting quietly at a gate is a minute of potential spending, and airports today generate a significant share of their total revenue, often close to half at larger hubs, from exactly this kind of retail and food spending rather than from airline landing fees. That single fact quietly reshaped nearly every terminal built or renovated afterward. Escalators rarely drop you directly at your gate anymore. They deliver you to a central point facing a retail corridor, requiring a short detour past shops to continue toward where you actually need to go. Seating in the busiest commercial zones is often kept deliberately limited, not from a lack of space, but because comfortable seating gives people a reason to stop walking, and a person who's stopped walking has stopped passing new shop windows. And restrooms, one of the few genuinely necessary stops in an airport, one that every single passenger will eventually need regardless of how much they intended to spend, became one of the most useful tools available for extending that walk even further. Placing them just beyond the main retail concourse guarantees that virtually everyone, whether they intended to shop or not, walks the full gauntlet at least once. There's a psychological layer sitting underneath all of this too, and it's not just about physical routing. Passengers who've just cleared the stress of a security checkpoint experience a documented shift into a more relaxed, less price-sensitive state of mind, almost immediately afterward, a kind of post-stress relief that makes browsing feel like part of the reward, rather than an unwanted delay. Airport designers have known this for years, which is why the most aggressive retail routing tends to sit immediately past security rather than near the gates themselves, catching travelers at the exact moment they're most primed to wander and least likely to feel rushed. Most people are also right-handed and instinctively pull luggage with that hand, which nudges the body into walking in a gentle counterclockwise pattern through open spaces. A small quirk of human movement that terminal designers account for when deciding which side of a corridor gets the more expensive storefronts. By the time most people reach their actual gate, the shopping opportunity has usually already come and gone, whether they bought anything or not. None of this makes airport design purely manipulative, and it's worth being fair to the other side of the story. Longer walking routes also genuinely help distribute crowds more evenly across a terminal, reducing dangerous bottlenecks near security checkpoints during peak hours. Retail revenue keeps landing fees lower for airlines, which in turn keeps ticket prices from climbing even higher than they already have. The same design that maximizes your exposure to a fragrance counter is also, in a very real sense, subsidizing part of the price of your ticket. It's not a pure trick played on unsuspecting travelers. It's a genuinely dual-purpose system, built on decades of data about how people move, spend, and relax under mild stress, that happens to benefit the airport's bottom line and the traveler's wallet at the same time, even if only one of those benefits is obvious while you're walking it. So, what if that catering manager in 1947 had never noticed the opportunity sitting in his own terminal and had simply let bored travelers sit and wait the way airports had always assumed they would? Airports might have developed along a much more direct, utilitarian model, security to gate in the shortest possible line, with retail treated as an afterthought squeezed into leftover corners, rather than the organizing principle behind the entire floor plan. Landing fees would likely be considerably higher today to make up the lost revenue, and ticket prices along with them. The extra 6 or 7 minutes you spend walking past shops you never intended to enter might be quietly keeping your flight a little cheaper than it would otherwise be. Remember that long walk you've made 100 times, cutting through duty-free just to reach a bathroom that felt farther away than it needed to be? It was never bad planning. It was a business model, born from one bored crowd stuck waiting for propeller planes to refuel on the edge of Ireland, refined over 7 decades into one of the most quietly effective pieces of behavioral design most people walk through without ever noticing it's there. So next time you find yourself weaving past a wall of chocolate and a rack of sunglasses just to find a restroom, remember what's actually happening. You're not lost, and the airport isn't badly designed. You're walking through nearly 80 years of retail psychology, disguised as a hallway, built the exact same way in nearly every terminal on the planet. You've made that walk 100 times. Now you know why.